Now, what I would like to do is I would like to release a schematic template as well as a project template so that every single user that uses or log into the vault would only specify the template based on what they have in the vault, as well as create projects based on the projects template that I've created in my vault. So what I can do is I can basically just open up an existing template here. All right, so I can just choose from users, look for my templates, which are, I'm just going to choose this A4 schematic document template. And you can see that it has the logo, it has all the borders and so on and so forth. If you want to change the logo, you can definitely just do a double click, click on browse and browse for the logo that you want. Always make sure that you keep X and Y ratio 1 to 1 so that the resolution do not change as you shrink it, right? It will always maintain its resolution. Okay. So once I'm happy with this, what I can do is, oh, a little bit quick note about logo. Make sure that it's also embedded as well. Otherwise, it's going to link to the location where the logo is pulling from, and that sometimes create problems whenever you use this sheet that has that does not have this checked in your vault, right? So if you are going to push a template to your vault, make sure that the logos have embedded as checked. Okay. So now what I can do is I can link this particular schematic document template to my vault. So I can simply just do a file, link sheet to vault, and then just point to a placeholder of the schematic template in my vault. Okay, so I'm just going to add an item within schematic templates, and I can just call it as A4 template, right? And I'm just going to uncheck on open for editing after creation because I already have the template. All I want to do is just point to the placeholder. Okay, so point to this one here, click on OK and OK. So once I've done that, now the rest is just like how it was originally. Save and then do a file release to vault. Right, that's going to release this schematic here to the vault. So I can then say first release of sheet. Okay, once I do that, I can close this project, the schematic sheet here, and I can do a file new project where I will add a schematic document and hopefully be able to point to that particular template to be used. So I can create a new project. I'm just going to choose a default PCB project here. As of right now, I'm just going to use a regular project. I'm going to talk about VCS and manage later on and what's the difference. VCS is, well, I'm just going to tell you right now, VCS is basically um, if you want your project to be in a version control repository, you would choose this and then you would define where your repositories are, which repository if you have multiple, and so on. Manage is basically a project that is stored within your vault, right? And it points to either an internal repository or an external repository, but manage basically means that the project is within vault. Okay. So I can, right now I'm just going to choose a regular project, right, to keep things a little bit simple, and then I'm going to add a new schematic. As you can see, because I have uploaded an A4 template to my vault, it's going to allow me to choose that template, right? Because that's the only one that I have in my vault. I'm going to say OK. I'm going to choose that. And then what I essentially want to do is add other more components or other more entities to my project, such as my PCB, right? Maybe another schematic. Okay. And then what I want to do is I would like to maybe specify my project parameters or my project options as well. Like if I don't use rooms that much, I can simply just do a right click on my project, go to project options. Under ECO generation for adding rooms, I'm just going to change it to ignore differences because I don't really use rooms in my designs. And then I will go to my parameters tab where I would click on add, where I would add a new parameter and call it as project number. Okay, and the value would be PRJ1234, right? So what I'm creating is basically a project parameter that I would like to reuse over and over again, right, by multiple sheets, where I can actually point to the sheet that I want as well. If I'm in my Sorry about that. Sorry about that. So all I'm doing is I'm defining a project parameter that I want to reuse for multiple sheets as well as in the PCB document, right? I just want to point to this particular parameter here. So I'll say OK to create a project parameter, and then I can point to that project parameter from my PCB document, right? So I can simply just do a place text or string, hit the tab key, and then point to the project parameter by making sure that I type in project number. I can do a part code as well to be a little bit more unique, and then I can put it on my top overlay. So as you can see here, it is showing me the parameter name and not the value that the parameter represents. So I can hit the L key, or I can simply just go to design, board layers and colors, and under view options, I'm going to check on convert special strings. Right, that's how you would show the parameter value and not the parameter name. Now if I go into my project options, what I can do is I can change this to let's say ABCD 1 2 3 4, and this will change. Oops. Let me try that. A, B, C, D, 1, 2, 3, 4. And this will change not just for this particular instance, but if you have multiple instances here, right? If you have multiple strings that point to that instance, that project parameter, all of that will also change, right? So imagine if you have a project parameter here, a project parameter here, a project parameter in your PCB document, all of this will change right after you change that one single instance in your project options in the parameter tab, right? So this becomes really useful for things like project number, customer, client, or maybe just the project name as well, right? Okay, so once I've done all of this, I really would want to release this as a project template, right? Because I want every guy or every person that wants to create a project to be using this as a baseline, right? He or she can still modify the sheet and so on and so forth, but I really would like him to use this as a baseline whenever he creates a project, right? So to release this as a project template, I can simply just go into project and release to vault. But let me just save everything first. Okay, so once I've saved everything, I can now go into my projects menu and then go release to vault as template, and I would specify placeholder once again, so it will be under projects template, add an item, project template, and I can just give it a little bit more meaningful, like for example, um, simple project with 2 sheets, right? And that's all. So once again, I'm not going to open for editing and just click on OK. Okay, I'm going to point to this project template placeholder here, click on OK. Now what I can do is, once it has been released, I can simply just close this project, or what I can do is I can do a file new project, and you can now see that this project template would appear in here, right, telling you that this is the simple project with 2 sheets, and then I can click on OK. It's going to come with the 2 sheets as well as the PCB document with that simple barcode on the bottom left corner, right? So now what you're doing is you're just creating a regular project, right? If you want to convert this regular project to a managed project where as long as a user has access to the vault, he or she can just do a file, open managed project, and open up that project. So it enhances a collaboration um, collaboration between team members, right? Because multiple people have access to the same project um, central directory, right? Whether it's from 2 different repositories, whether it's from maybe one from internal repository, another from external, it doesn't matter because once you push it to your vault as a managed project, and if you make sure that the project is shared by certain users, as long as he or she can log into the vault and he has permissions to that project as well as that repository, he would be able to access that project by doing a file open manage project, right? So what I can do is if I have an existing project, as you can see here, and I would like to convert this to a managed project, all I gotta do is just do a right click and convert to managed project, right? And then it's going to allow me to choose the repository that I want to create this project in, right? So whenever you create a managed project, you're creating two things, right? One, which is the placeholder, which will be in the project directory in the inside folder, inside the project's vault folder, and then it's also going to create all its version control instances as well as protocols all within the default repository folder. Where is this default repository? So if you go into our vault here and go to VCS, which stands for version control systems, you're going to see that when you install Altium Vault, it's going to come with the default repository, which is sitting in localhost default repository, right? If you actually go to your server, which is hosting your Vault, you can see that in your program data, Altium, Vault server data, and under repository, you'll be able to see this default repository here. Now, if you try to expand it, you're not going to see anything meaningful because this is all based on a SVN protocol. If you want to see items within this default repository in a file-based structure, you have to install something like a Tortoise SVN client or Subversion client, depending on what your company prefers or your IT prefers. Um, I would generally use Tortoise SVN because it's free and it's simple to use. All I gotta do is just do a right click on that repo, Tortoise SVN, and do a repo browser, and you can see the folders, if it exists, or files within this particular repository. So let's try that out. So I'm going to convert this project 3 as a managed project into my default repository here, and just click on OK. First, it's going to create a pointer to that version control, so you're going to see all these pluses here. I have not done any comments yet. In order to comment, I would do a right click and save manage project. This will do two things. One is it will save all the project documents as well as the project itself, and then it's also going to do a commit to my version control to give it a timestamp as well as the date stamp and the author and whatnot, and to allow users to know the head revision as well as the previous revisions and so on and so forth. So I'm just going to say first commit of project. You're going to see all the check marks here, right? So this is definitely easier compared to the previous, to using regular version control, because in regular version control you have to save and then you have to do another commit to version control, which is tend to be a little bit more um, slower because it's a two-step procedure versus this, which is just a one-step procedure. Now that you have done this, if you actually go into your repo browser here and do a refresh, you're going to see the PCB project 3 here that consists of this project as well as the PCB document and the two schematic sheets, right? So if you want to view the content of repository, make sure that you use the client, a client SVN, an SVN client like Tortoise or Subversion, like a visual SVN, like I've said, right? Okay. Now what I want to do is I want to make some changes to my design here. So I'm just going to add maybe two headers here as such, right? A very simple two header design. And then I'm just going to do a annotate of my schematics and then do a design update PCB. Okay, so once I have the two headers in here, I can simply just place them right in the middle of the board. I can also place a circle, right, to kind of define the board shape. Okay, and then I'm going to make sure that my origin is correct, so I'm going to use snap to arc centers and then do a set of my origin to the arc center. Right, so very simple Altium stuff, and then I'm basically going to make connections from one pad to another. Can use multi-routing as well to to give it a nice tray structure. Do the same for my second one here. Okay, so once I've done that, I can now do another right click, save manage project. Now it's going to commit this to my version control because I modified both of the documents. It's going to show me that these two have been modified, and then I can say added to components, made connections. Okay, so now this um, exclamation mark here will change to check mark, showing that this is the most current revision. Now, what if I want to see my previous revisions? Maybe I want to do a comparison between my current and my older revision. I can simply just go into my system and go into Storage Manager to open up the Storage Manager panel. And if you have used version control before, this might be very trivial, right? So all you gotta do is just select the PCB document, select the revision that you want to compare or you want to open. You can do a right click on the revision that you want to open and do a right click and open. Or if you want to do a compare, you can hold the control key and select the two that you want to compare and then do a right click and compare. Right? Once you hit compare, the differences panel will pop up, right? And the differences panel will basically show you what's different between these two revisions or these two documents in general, right? So you can see that I added an arc, I added the two components as well as several nets, right? And so on and so forth, right? So this gives you a real good comparison between revisions, which is one of the powerful things about version control. And what Altium Vault does is merely just make sure that all the projects are accessible by everyone that has logged on to your vault, so you can be remote, right? And you can still access to your vault without using an SVN, without using a VPN. And the reason is because this is all hosted on an IIS protocol, right? As long as you have access to the external IP and the external IP as well as the port is connected to the correct server from the router, you will have access to the Altium Vault, right? So it's a single access. You do not need to make sure that, oh, I can actually access for external to my first repository and then to my second repository, or maybe you need to VPN, which takes a lot of time and so on and so forth, and it slows you down. It's a lot easier to just point to point to the vault through an external IP, and then make sure that you always just do a file open manage project, right? Which will then show you all the projects over here. You can also filter it as well if you want to filter by keywords and so on. You can make use of keyword search on the top also. Okay, so once you have done that, if I were to add a component from my vault, let's say, if I were to add this crystal here, right, and then I do a save manage project once again, you're going to see that because I've added this component here, I can also make use of my where use capability as well, right? So even if I close this project here, and if I go back to my vault and I want to see which project is currently using this component, right? All I gotta do is just go into where used, right? And it's going to tell you that PCB project 3 is currently using this component. This feature alone is great, right? Because like in the past, what companies have to do is they have to filter out every single project and make sure, okay, you don't have this obsolete component, you don't have this obsolete component, you don't have this obsolete component. Now, because of this rare use feature, you'll be able to know right away before you even make a component obsolete, right? Or maybe you want to change a component and you're not sure if you'll impact how many number of projects, right? So this will allow you to know exactly how many projects are currently using this component so that you can make your own judgment call whether or not it's worth changing the component versus maintaining the status quo, right? So that's how you would make use of managed projects.